Thought Stephen King was all about horror? Well, he kind of was, until the mid-80s when he pumped out something about castles, wizards, dungeons and dragons. And that's what we're looking at in this video. Here are 19 reasons to read The Eyes of the Dragon. Hi there and welcome back to my channel. I'm Dave Musson, at Dave Musson on Instagram, and this is the place where I'm walking you through Stephen King's bibliography in chronological order and reviewing all of his books, and along the way giving you 19 reasons to read each one. If that sounds like something you'd like more of, then please do check out my channel and maybe even consider subscribing so you don't miss any future videos. We've now reached 1984 and The Eyes of the Dragon, which is basically King doing YA. So settle down and let's get into those reasons to read this thing. Oh, and as always, some potential for spoilers ahead. So this is a very personal book for King, as he actually wrote it for his daughter, Naomi. So she wasn't into his scary stuff. She'd given it a try at the insistence of her mum, Tabitha, as a way of trying to understand her dad a bit more, but still wasn't really taken. Undeterred, King decided to write something just for her and asked Naomi what sort of thing she was into. She said dragons, and so this book was born. So King wrote this out in longhand on a yellow legal pad sat in front of the fire in their home in Western Maine, and apparently he was working on The Eyes of the Dragon around the same time he was also doing some work on Misery. He'd work on one in the day and the other in the evening. Honestly, the man was a machine. Aside from wanting to please his daughter, the fantasy vibes are so strong in this one because King had just got off writing The Talisman around this time, which is something we'll come to in an upcoming video. Having just written The Talisman, the territories were very prominent in his mind, and they really helped form the kingdom of Delain, which is where this story is set. Now, by King's own admission, his daughter Naomi was not exactly enthusiastic when she took the manuscript off him, but that didn't last long. And actually, her biggest problem with it was that she didn't want it to end. She loved it. Sorry, that was a very Donald Trump hand signal, wasn't it? So that might have been where the tale of this book ended. After all, King didn't write it for publication. He wrote it for Naomi. But he did write it down. And when Stephen King writes something down, do you really think it's not going to get published at some point? So if you're wondering why I'm sitting here telling you that this book came out in 1984, when everywhere you've seen online probably says 1987, let me explain, because they're kind of both right. The first edition was in 1984, but it was limited to 1,250 copies, which were only available through King's own printing press, Philtrum Press. 1,000 copies, numbered in black, were available for $120 each, while the remaining 250 were numbered in red and were gifted to King's friends. Demand for the book was so high that the destination of those 1,000 copies that were sold was actually sorted out by a lottery. Then, in 1987, Viking finally convinced King to do a mass market release of the book. Quite a lot of changes were made for the 87 edition, which is probably the one you will read and is certainly the one I've read. Most of those changes were actually just tidying up typos and errors and things like that, basically because the original version did not have a proofreader. So the story's original title was The Napkins. Now, napkins do play an important role in the story, but thank fuck they changed that title. Honestly, The Napkins, rubbish. So one cute little fact for you, this book is dedicated to Naomi and also Ben Straub, the son of Peter Straub, with whom Stephen King had just written The Talisman. And not only that, there are two characters, Ben and Naomi, in the story, who are sort of an homage to those two kids. Very sweet. Okay, so we're up to reason 10 and I've still not given you the hook of this book. So, basically, there's a king, and this king is murdered by his evil magician. This magician then frames the king's eldest son for the murder and has him sentenced to years in prison at the top of a tower. Only trouble is, the king's youngest son saw what happened because he was watching the king's study from a hidden room behind a dragon that is mounted up on the wall in that study. he saw it all through the eyes of the dragon. Now this young prince, who, remember, knows what really happened, then takes the crown and is manipulated by the wizard while he's in power. And the rest of the story is a battle to work out whether good is going to triumph over evil and whether the truth will out. And there's also napkins. Oh, that magician? He's our man, Randall Flagg. Both versions of this book were accompanied by illustrations. The 1984 original was handled by Kenneth R. Linkhauser, while the mass markets edition's drawings were done by David Palladini. For some reason, 2 French editions that have come out subsequently each commissioned another artist to do different illustrations. Seems like everybody wants a go. So my advice for this book to get the most out of it is to leave any prejudices you might have about fantasy and YA fiction out the door. Yes, some of the names are stupid and it's a far cry from what King had done previously, but it is still Stephen fucking King telling you a story, and if you just go with it, you will have a lovely time. So King's fans weren't exactly hot on this book when it came out. They dismissed it as a children's story, which it is, it was written for his child, and they dismissed it as fantasy, which it is. Still, don't sweat it, it's a good book, and even if you don't think it's a good book, you don't have to like everything he's ever written. Trust me on that, we've got the Talisman coming up soon. The critics, on the other hand, did like it. The New York Times said it was more elegant than any other novel Mr. King has written so far. That's probably fair. It's certainly a different vibe from a possessed evil car running down greaser bad guys, isn't it? So apparently the negative fan reaction to this book actually sort of wormed its way into the plot of Misery. So in Misery, the main character is an author who tries to do something different, and his #1 fan doesn't particularly enjoy that. But I won't go any further there. We've got Misery coming up in the not too distant future. Now, the narration of this book is something worth talking about. It's probably something you'll either be completely fine with or find really fucking annoying. The story is told by this unnamed narrator who has this really quirky style and regularly breaks the fourth wall to talk direct to you as the reader. It's a bit jarring. You can kind of see what he's going for, but for what it's worth, I found it pretty irritating. So despite it being written for his daughter, King has since said that he sees The Eyes of a Dragon as something of a book for adults masquerading as a children's book. A bit like, as he said, The Hobbit or Treasure Island. So, don't feel bad about picking this book up. It's fine whatever age you happen to be. Just go and read it. Lastly, you won't be surprised to know that this one does have connections to King's other work, aside from simply Our Man Flagg. As you may have gathered, this is set in the Dark Tower universe, and in the drawing of the 3, Roland even mentions meeting 2 of the characters from this book. We also see Rhea of the Coos, who we'll meet later in Wizard and Glass. And for some bonus extra horror world stuff, there's even a sneak cameo from H.P. Lovecraft's Necronomicon. So there you go. Okay, that's 19 reasons for you to give The Eyes of a Dragon a try. Do let me know what you think of this one in the comments below. And if you'd like to see more of these sorts of videos where I'm talking you through 19 reasons to read Stephen King books, then do check out the rest of my channel. There's plenty there for you to explore. And hey, why not subscribe so you don't miss any future ones? I'm working through in chronological order, so you can see where we're up to and you'll know where we're going next. Oh, and while we're plugging stuff, if you didn't hate the background music, that was done by my band, Chapter 19, yes, named after a Stephen King type thing, and our first single, the one that is the background music for this video, is about Stephen King and is called Stephen. There's a link to it in the description. If you hated it, then just pretend I didn't just say that. Either way, do come over to Instagram, where I'm at Dave Musson, and say hi, and maybe just see what I'm up to on there as well. Next up is a book I've been dreading about making a video about because, frankly, I hate this book, but I'm not going to quit just when the going gets tough, so do check back then to see how I get on with this particularly personal challenge. Otherwise, look after yourself, and I will see you soon.